Okay, thank you very much. I'd now like to call to order this committee, the whole meeting of August 14th, 2025. At this point in time, I'll ask if there are any declarations of interest. Seeing none, we will move through business arising from the minutes. Seeing nothing, we will go. Then we have three different delegations under section 4. So we're going to, and each one will be shared virtually. So we will go to the screen to, first of all, we'll call upon Ms. Cassidy, who will be presenting with regards to BCom. And I believe the clerks will bring her online so we can all have a look on our screens.
Sorry, good morning. I'm just going to get my video up here.
Good morning, Ms. Cassidy.
Good morning.
And
Everyone
as
can hear and see me?
yes, we can. And as you know, you have 10 minutes to make your deputation. At that point, at your conclusion, I'll look around the room and see if we have any questions for you. So you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Madam Warden and respected members of council. Thank you for taking the time to read and consider all the feedback from surrounding neighbors. Those that will have to live with this development if allowed to proceed, and those who clearly oppose. I'm here speaking not only on my behalf and my family's behalf, but on theirs as well. I hope you have all had a chance to read and review the many letters submitted that were not included in this staff report. You have read many concerns about noise, traffic, environment, and concerns of who will be able to police these events and ensure they are operating as stated, especially late into the evening. What this comes down to with respect to this meeting is whether it is the appropriate place for this type of growth and development under the Planning Act. Based on everything you have heard and read, having a 365-day event venue, essentially mainly for weddings and amplified music and extended noise times right next door to residential houses makes this area entirely not the right place. The municipality of Grey Highlands just voted against this on June 18th. To summarize, this site is not surrounded by farmland. It's surrounded by residential properties. People live here and conduct their lives here. A simple Google search turns up 8 homes within a few hundred meters of this proposed site and many more within a kilometer. Please consider if any of you would be okay with having this right beside your home, and please vote accordingly. Noise studies are incomplete. The tests completed are simulated and not an actual representation of how noise will travel. To do this, the company that did the study would have had to have set up smart microphones to monitor the sound on neighboring properties. To my knowledge, this was not done. I can say this with confidence because my husband has a sound engineering degree and we own an audio production company and often have to monitor sound levels at events. A blanket change to the noise bylaw extended to these times is ridiculous and unfair to surrounding residents and seems to be a contradiction to the eco-friendly venue that is being proposed. The current bylaw states that the loud operation of vehicle, home radio, stereo, or alike at a level to disturb others and can be heard at a loud level more than 50 feet from the source is prohibited. There would be very limited employment opportunities for local businesses as companies hired for events can be from anywhere and will likely be someone that the event host knows and trusts. Tourism will not be bolstered as attendees will come to site, make noise and pollution, and leave to go to their homes outside of the area. Increased tourism should not be considered in major residential areas. It should be directed towards city centers. There are 2 destination wedding venues within the immediate area and an additional 10 within a 20-kilometer drive of those seeking a natural-inspired event venue. There are also many Airbnbs as well as the Gandhi glamping across the street for those who are looking for a quiet retreat. Limiting size and scale is smoke and mirrors. 50 people can make just as much noise as 95, and 12 occasions per year with 95 people is every weekend in the summer when this would be most desirable. The additional trails that guests would be permitted to access is very concerning, as there is high potential for ecological damage under little supervision. Trespassing to neighbor properties, despite signage, will be inevitable. Noting there is hunting in this area, and guests would likely be unaware of those rules and regulations. On-site porta potties being considered for 3 years should not be an option, and it is a red flag given the owner's history of non-compliance and unwillingness to consider the temporary use bylaw. As noted, the subject application falls outside of OPA 23 the OPA 23 policy, and should not be considered on that basis, given the amplified noise to be endured for extended hours, exceeding the maximum area, even when including trails, the number of guests allowed all year long in a very residential area. The subject application is not small or recreational and is no comparison to OPA 23. Regarding OPA 22, the application states there will be 95 people per event on a 40.76 hectare property. This is misleading, as only 1.05 hectares are actually proposed for use. The remainder consists of significant woodland and wetland that will remain largely unused. This results in the actual density of over 9,040 people per kilometer squared, which far exceeds the rural density standard of 400 people per kilometer squared. Such density contradicts the definition of resource-based recreational use and effectively reclassifies this operation as a commercial property. Finally, I'd like to reiterate this is a rural residential area with many surrounding residents that consists of young families, retired couples, and vacation homes. It is not the appropriate place for a commercial venue of this size. I'd like to take just another moment of your time to show you how close in proximity this proposed development is to my home, as well as my neighbors. I'm currently standing on my neighbor's property and have been given permission from the Vanrys, and I'm well within their property line. Just behind this fence behind me is one of the proposed parking lots, cabin and tent camping areas. It is in very close proximity to my neighbor's front door and to our house and our bedroom window, which is within 200 feet to the west behind the Vanry residence. So this site currently has some yurts and a bathhouse that are already constructed. I'd like to just mention once more that I am within the property line and I am not trespassing. There is a yurt just right here, another bathhouse here, and a yurt platform just here. This is my neighbor's front door. And just beyond that, as I mentioned, to the west is my home, my husband's home, and my 2-year-old son's home. Our bedroom window also faces to the east towards the proposed development, which is quite concerning to us in regards to the noise bylaw extension that's being requested. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to listen to the concerns of this quiet, rural residential neighborhood, and I ask you to vote against this proposed development.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Cassidy. I'll just give you a moment to find your spot and I'll look around the room to see if there are any questions. And I am not seeing any online or here in the chamber. So thank you again for presenting your material for us this morning for our consideration. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you. And we will now Okay, so next up, we do have Ms. Janssen Grieve, but we don't see her yet logged on. So what we can do is we can move on to Ms. Loft, who is presenting on behalf of BCOM Incorporated, and we'll keep an eye out for participation from our third deputation. So good morning, Ms. Loft. We have everybody here in the chamber and virtual. So again, if you will have 10 minutes, and then at the end of that, I will take a moment to look around the room to see if there are any questions for you. You have the floor.
Good morning. Thank you. So I do have a PowerPoint, and I understand from staff that I am to present. So I'll just share my screen if that's okay.
Yes, please do.
Thank you. Good morning to Warden Matrosofts, to County Council, as well as staff. My name is Christine Loft of Loft Planning Inc., and I am representing the landowner, BCOM Inc. The owners are online as well as in the audience today, and this delegation is related to Official Plan Amendment 22. I am going to run through the slides fairly quickly just because I have quite a few slides in 10 minutes. So we are delegating today in order to provide County Council an overview of the proposal and to provide the updates that have been made from the original proposal in response to the comments received at the statutory public meeting, and ultimately to request that County Council approve the official plan amendment and allow the daily details of the operations to be dealt with through the implementing zoning bylaw amendment before the municipality of Grey Highlands. The property is known as 46615 12th Concession B within the municipality of Grey Highlands. The lands are rectangularly shaped and located on the north side of the 12th Concession B. The lands are 40.76 hectares in lot area with a lot frontage of 343 meters. There are existing structures on the property, including a dwelling, and accessory structures. The lands are surrounded to the north by woodlands and agricultural lands, to the east with woodlands, rural lands, and rural residences. To the south are residences associated with Lake Eugenia, as well as extensive woodlands. And to the west are woodlands, rural lands, and a number of rural residences. The lands are regulated by the Grey Stauble Conservation Authority, and specifically the area at the front of the property, which we're proposing to redesignate, are regulated. With respect to the proposed venue use and accommodation use, there would be a proposed maximum of 95 guests permitted on site at any event. The proposed zoned and designated area is limited in area, and the proposed zoning would build upon existing zoning by way of exception 043, which I'll speak about, and I know staff spoke about in their staff report as well. And so there are existing permissions on site for a health spa and for 4 trailer campsites, as well as the dwelling. The lands are designated rural, wetland, and hazard, and the purpose of the official plan amendment is to amend Schedule A and to change the designation of the subject lands from on a portion of the property from rural to the rural site-specific designation. And as you will hear within the county staff report, the specific policy area will be limited to 1.05 hectares, and the site-specific policy will permit an additional permitted use being an event venue. The county official plan provides that the rural areas will permit the consideration of resource-based recreational uses and other appropriate rural land uses, so long as they do not impact agriculture, forestry, aggregate extraction, or the natural environment. And the official plan also provides that the rural land use type offers flexibility for lot creation, economic development, tourism, residential, and recreation. And it also provides that while there is greater flexibility in the rural land use type, farming and resource uses are still to be given priority for protection. And I would just provide that I've provided a planning report as well as an addendum, and certainly all of the policies within the rural designation have been provided in those reports and provide opinions. With respect to the site plan, so this is a conceptual overview, and I've zoomed in just on the area that in part is proposed to be redesignated. So starting at the front lot line, and I guess because I'm presenting, I can sort of point, but at the front of the lot, of course, is the main entrance, and from the main entrance in is the existing residence, which is on the left-hand side and is in red. Moving down is a small parking area in yellow and labeled as parking. There's the hall, which is the proposed area as the event venue, and I'll show you photos in a minute. There is an existing pool on site. This purple area is the proposed septic system. And while this is conceptual, we have had Capes Engineering size it. So we expect that that shape and size is accurate. And then a parking area, there's the cabin tent area, and we've sort of shown in green the proposed tent sites, and as well as some additional parking towards a little closer to the back of the property and back of this designated area. And I would just note that this dark blue hashed line is actually the 30-meter setback from the wetland and the hazard lands as identified within the environmental impact study. I have a few quick slides to show. So this is just a photo from the entrance looking into the site, and you can see the existing house on the left. You can see the hall in the foreground, and then the pool is actually just beside the hall area. Two photos of, and you just saw them on the previous delegation, but there are existing platforms and yurts on site as part of the existing approvals of the site. This is actually a photo of the hall on the left, a visual, and then an interior shot on the right-hand side. And then on the left, just a small area showing where wedding vows would be held. And on the right, just a photo of the pond area. This is the existing dwelling, and there are existing permissions in the zoning for a health spa as well as accommodation within that existing dwelling. And then a fire pit, which exists today and just located just in close proximity to the existing house. What is before County Council today is the official plan amendment. However, we are asking Council to approve the official plan amendment based on the details being provided within the implementing zoning bylaw. So I just wanted to provide an overview of those details. So the zoning bylaw does include a specific special events definition, as the zoning bylaw currently does not include a definition. So the definition before municipal council will be special events shall include the holding of an assembly of persons for the purpose of health and wellness retreats, educational events, corporate or business retreats, weddings, and other similar gatherings. And in terms of general provisions, total maximum number of guests on site at any given time, 95 persons per event for 12 events a year. And a total maximum number of guests on site at any given time being for 50 persons, which would be unlimited number of events per year. Events could be held then January 1 through December 31st, so all year annually. And then operations, Friday to Sunday events ending at 11:30 p.m. and weekday hours of operations Monday through Thursday ending at 11 p.m. So I have highlighted these in red because these have been changes that have been made since the initial submission in response to comments received at the public meeting. And with respect to on-site accommodation, there's a maximum of 5 guest cabins and a maximum of 7 guest tents proposed, which just in terms of persons would be 34 guests. And then guest accommodation is 16 guests, and that is within the existing house. And there are existing approvals for guests within that existing house. A number of technical reports have been completed, planning report, as well as the draft amendments provided, and we provided addendum reports, a servicing report, an environmental impact study, a noise assessment has also been completed and has been peer reviewed. And while I won't go through the details of the technical studies, I did just want to provide that, again, the lands are regulated by the Conservation Authority. The Conservation Authority did review the environmental impact study and did provide comments on May 21, 2024, that the Conservation Authority has no objections to the proposal for the described zoning bylaw amendment application or the associated development. A noise assessment was completed, and the county actually had the noise assessment peer reviewed on October 22nd, 2024, the peer review was completed and concluded that the proposed venue can be compatible. They did provide recommendations, and we would agree that these recommendations are included within a site plan agreement, which of course would be typical. And it is proposed that, and the noise assessment did include this, that an administration policy and management plan be implemented by the landowner. And we actually have provided staff with a draft of what that policy would look like. A number of other considerations, of course, were made: traffic and traffic movements. A traffic impact study was not required as the anticipated traffic volumes are reasonable and serviceable by the existing road network. Refuse will be stored appropriately, covered on site and within designated areas. An operational agreement would be provided to each organizer of events and would be mutually signed, so they're aware of the rules and the limitations on site. And there will be on-site staffing at all times during event, representing the landowner and ensuring that the rules and regulations are met. Those are my comments, and on behalf of the owners of BCOM Inc., we would ask that County Council approve the proposed official plan amendment before you. BCOM wishes to establish and operate a successful and meaningful business that benefits both the municipality and the county. We have appreciated all of the work that municipal staff and county staff have put into this, and a lot of hours and time have been spent listening to the consideration that we did here at the public meeting, and following the public meeting, additional ratepayer comments. So we do feel that we have listened to the comments. We've made significant changes to the proposal, and feel that all of the recommendations provided within the technical reports can certainly be implemented through the zoning bylaw amendment, through a site plan agreement. We are proposing a holding provision on the zoning before municipal council with regard to entering into a site plan agreement. And those are my comments.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Loft. At this point in time, I will look around the chamber to see if there are any questions from council members. I'm going to go to Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Warden. Just one question for clarity regarding the number of persons on site. The 95 is the guests, and I'm just assuming that that does not include the number of staff that will be required, the band itself, event coordinators and organizations.
Thank you. Through you to the counselors. So the 95 persons, it includes guests. So that would include anyone at the event and anyone staying overnight. It's a total number of persons on site as part of the event. You are correct. It obviously does not include a person that's there overseeing the event or band members, which I would expect to be fairly minimal. But I think it's a good question, and I know it was raised at municipal council, and I didn't have a chance to answer that day, but it is the total number of people that would be on site at the event, including those staying overnight. Thank you.
Okay, it will go over to Councillor McKay.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Warden. Sounds to me like, was there a business there at one time? That's my only question.
Ms. Loft?
Thank you. Through you to the councillor. So there are existing zoning permissions on site that include a wellness facility within the existing house. It also did allow for overnight accommodation within the house, and it also included limited tent and trailer permissions on site. I'm not actually sure to the extent of those operations, but certainly those are the permissions that are on site. I have been on site, and certainly those portions exist, and the house internally was certainly set up for a wellness center. Thank you.
Okay, I'll look around the room. And I'll go to Councillor Eccles.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation, Ms. Lopp. A couple of questions. One of them is on the 30-meter wetland setback. I can't tell you what page that's on, but it had the parking, the hall, the pool, the colored one, and it's the blue line. It's a 30-meter setback, but it goes right through the pond area. I'm slightly confused on, we've got a setback from the, but it's right in the middle of the pond. Any explanation on that?
Ms. Loft?
Thank you. Thank you through the chair to County Councillor Eccles. So first of all, we are meeting all of the setbacks to the wetland designation. And so if the wetland designation, I'd have to pull up the mapping, but it doesn't necessarily include the pond area. The pond area is likely within the Conservation Authority designate zones considered hazard. So we are meeting the requirements of the wetland designation.
Okay, and I'll look around to see if there are any other questions. Oh, the follow-up from Councillor Eccles.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess maybe the pond's not considered the wetland, it's just considered wet. My second question was somewhat similar to Councillor Nielsen's. 95 people or 95 guests on site for 12 times a year, 50 people on site at any time, 365, I guess we could have that. So those 12 times of the year, are those 95 in addition to the 50, making it 145 for 12 times a year?
Ms. Loft?
Thank you. Thank you through the chair to Councillor Eccles. So we are proposing, so originally the proposal was for 95 persons per event, but in listening to the comments received, it was decided by the landowners that really 12 events per year at the 95 persons was reasonable in terms of the operations. They certainly do not expect to have multiple events of that size a week, and that if you were holding an event of that size, then people would want to be there the day before to set up and the day after to tear down. And so it's certainly reasonable that there only be 12 events a year at the 95 persons. And with respect to the 50 persons, that would, so the intent would be that those 50 persons would be, it's obviously a much smaller event, that it would be held in the hall, and that those may be throughout the year. So they could be within inclement weather, because the event would be held within the hall only and limited to 50 persons per event. So if like basically only 12 events a year can be at the 95 persons on site at any given time. Should the owner wish to have within the same week a 50 persons event, they could do that, say on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, a corporate retreat, a birthday party, a wedding shower. So there could be multiple events a year. However, the 95 persons per event would be limited to 12.
Okay, thank you. I have a question from the Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and thank you, Ms. Loft, for the presentation. How did you, or how did the proponent come to the number of 95? Like not 94, not 96, 95. How did you come to that one? Please.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Loft?
Thank you. Through the chair to the county councillor. It is the occupancy of the hall.
Okay, thank you. I'll look around for any further questions. I'm not seeing any here. We'll go to, that's Madam Clerk, that's not Councillor Bordenaux's hand, right? That's just the cursor. Yeah, okay, all right. Okay, so it looks like we've come to the conclusion of the questions for you, Ms. Law. Thank you very much for presenting and for sharing your materials.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. So with that, then we will move on to items to determine requiring separate discussion listed in section 6. We have 5 different items. Are there any items there that any county council members wish to pull? We'll go to Councillor Body.
I'd like to discuss 6D and E separately. We'll be passing and supporting, but just think they need to be highlighted. Thanks.
Sorry, I'm just getting some messages there. Sorry, could we just take a 5-minute break, please? We just need a chance to coordinate some process questions that are coming across the table here. So we'll just take a brief 5-minute break, please. If I can invite all the county members, committee of the whole members back to their table, thank you. Okay, thank you very much, committee of the whole members. We sorted our questions here at the table out, and I'd like to be able to begin again then with item number 5, determination of items requiring separate discussion. So, Councillor Body?
Yeah, the questions that I had actually are pretty simple, and they got answered just in the break there, so I don't need to have those pulled from the consent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other items through A through E that wish to be pulled, that the committee of the whole members wish to pull? Okay, so seeing none then, and then I will then put out the recommendation is that the following consent agenda items be received, and that staff be authorized to take actions necessary to give effect to the recommendations in the staff reports, and that the correspondence be supported or received for information as recommended in the consent agenda. So with that, I'll look for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Carleton, seconded by Councillor Dobreen. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, so that allows us to move on to items for separate discussion, and we have 6, 7, we have a number of different items here. So we are going to begin with item 7A. Just to get it onto the floor, then I will look for if there's a mover and or seconder for the recommended motion that report PDR CW 5225 regarding OPA 22 BCom Inc. Highland Estate be received, and that the official plan amendment 4208180 OPA 22 BCom Inc., also known as Highland Estate, which proposes a site-specific exception to the rural designation to permit a special events venue on approximately 1.05 acres, legally described as part lot 33, Concession 13 in the geographic township of Artemisia, now in the municipality of Grey Highlands, be supported, and that staff be directed to prepare a bylaw for approval by County Council. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Hutchinson, seconder. Seconded by Councillor Carlton. It's now on the floor for discussion. And with that, then I would like to invite Ms. Hillier to come to the lectern to make her presentation. Good morning.
Good morning, County Council. Before I get started today, I just wanted to acknowledge all of those individuals who provided input into this file that we're reviewing here today. Over the past year, we've had numerous public comments come in with regards to this development. I have reviewed all of them. In particular, just before between the time of having written the staff report and presenting here today, we did receive a number of new comments that have come in to myself and to our clerk staff. To my knowledge, all or most of those have been circulated to our council members. I have personally reviewed all of those. And the ones that we see on our consent agenda today were those individuals who had specifically requested that their comments be read or presented out to council today. So that was the reason that those comments were listed on the consent agenda, whereas others were not on the agenda. But I did just want to reassure everyone that those comments have been reviewed and acknowledged and certainly considered as part of this recommendation for the development as a whole. So with that, I can launch into things here. So Ms. Locke did a great job presenting a bit of an overview of this file, which was excellent. I am going to take a little bit more time with this one today, just acknowledging, some of the discussions and challenges with this file. The recommendation that we're presenting here today is certainly not something that I've taken lightly. There have been just numerous discussions between myself and Grey Highlands planning staff, with the applicant, with members of the public. So this really has been quite a complex process, and certainly one of the more challenging files I've worked on during my time with the county. So as Ms. Loft noted, we've got a county official plan amendment, OPA 22, to establish a special events venue for hosting events, weddings, retreats, other types of smaller functions, potentially family reunions, small classes, those types of things. The property is around 40.5 hectares in size, just over 100 acres or so. Currently features that single residential dwelling and accessory structures. Some of those accessory structures include a historic hangar on the property, as well as a building that would be converted to that hall function for accommodating events. The lands have frontage on 12th Concession B in Grey Highlands, and the surrounding land uses largely include forests, wetlands, and other smaller residential parcels to the south. As one of the commenters today had noted, the municipality of Grey Highlands has also recently approved a 10-unit glamping facility on a property just south. So this is the subject property here. This little cleared area towards the bottom is, sorry, I'm not sure, you can't actually see my cursor. The cleared area towards the bottom of the site is where the event function would be held. And then the property just to kind of kitty corner there, the larger one south of 12th Concession B is where that glamping facility has been approved. So just to zoom in a little bit closer here, you can see towards the road, we've got the dwelling that exists that would be used for that short-term accommodation purposes for guests. We've got that central parking area. Towards the back, you can see a little structure right at the top of the screen there. That's the historic hangar. One of the changes that has been proposed or has come about as a result of some of the comments from the public and some of those studies that we reviewed is initially events were going to be held, or there was an option for events to be held within that hangar structure as kind of a live music type of venue. The noise studies we personally felt were going to be too impactful for the natural environment. And so we did request with the applicant that be removed from the event portion. So that is no longer contemplated within the OPA, and that structure has been removed. So all of the amplified noise would be held within the hall structure, which is sort of in the central portion of that treed area there. These are older photos, so you can't see the building at this point. And then sort of to the left of that treed area would be where the short-term accommodation uses would be. So just as some additional background here, the lands are designated as rural, hazard lands, and provincially significant wetlands in Schedule A of the county's official plan. It's also designated as a core area. So for those who aren't aware, our core area are areas within the county that we see as being the most ecologically significant, because they often overlap with our significant wetlands and our significant woodlands, and they provide a very contiguous area of species habitat. And so from that perspective, from the beginning, one of the public interests here is really that protection of the natural environment. And so we did request from the beginning that an environmental impact study be conducted at the site, which has been done and reviewed by our planning ecology staff in-house. The event buildings are predominantly located within existing cleared areas of the property. As noted, just if we scroll back one, that kind of pocket of trees right in the middle, a portion of that is proposed to be cleared for a future septic system, which would connect the event hall as well as all of the accommodation uses. So everything would be run on a central septic system, which would, have the impact of kind of consolidating the septic and, preventing potential future impacts with the surrounding wetland feature, for example. So along with the county official plan amendment, as Ms. Locke noted, a zoning bylaw amendment has been submitted to Grey Highlands. Both of these applications have been reviewed concurrently by county and municipal staff. The zoning proposal in front of Grey Highlands at the moment would permit the proposed special event use, as well as overnight guest accommodations. So that includes a maximum of 5 guest cabins, 7 tent sites, accommodation for up to 14 guests in existing structures, and a total of 41 parking spaces. As Ms. Locke noted, there is already zoning permissions in effect for the health spa use on this property. Just looking at the Grey Highlands zoning bylaw, it doesn't seem that that's a particularly well-defined term within their zoning bylaw. But just noting, it does have that existing kind of commercial permissions already in effect. The rationale for the OPA here, when we were looking at this file initially, we didn't have any policies in effect within our official plan to kind of give an easy response to whether or not this should be permitted or not. And we kind of had chatted internally about whether or not we could squeak this under the definition of a resource-based recreational use, noting, the kind of rationale for connecting the event with the surrounding natural environment. Ultimately, county staff felt that this didn't quite meet the definition of a resource-based recreational use. We didn't feel that events by their very nature relied on access to the natural environment. And so we did request that a county official plan amendment just to add an additional level of review to this file. I would also note that that's a slightly different planning opinion than Grey Highlands staff had at during the initial phases. So they did not request an official plan amendment to the Grey Highlands official plan. So with some of the feedback that's come out of the public process, one of the main concerns were, okay, if you permit this event use now, what are the chances that this is going to scale up in future? And so on the left side of the screen here is the original Schedule A. And so you can see that hatched red area towards the southern portion of the property there. So it was originally about 2 hectares in extent that we had kind of said, yeah, the event venue space can go in this general area. But as we really started honing in on some of those public comments and really tightening up the definition of what actually falls within that category of a special event, we really wanted to hone in on, what are the areas of the property where that event venue could function and would be covered with the OPA. And so we've scaled that back to 1.05 hectares, which is about half of that original proposal that had initially been circulated out to the public. The hangar area has also been excluded within that designation area. So all of that amplified sound would again be located within that enclosed hall structure. Just so we're on the same page, the wording for the special event venue within the current draft OPA is, so for the purposes of this use, a special event venue shall be limited to an event hall servicing areas, so including the septic system, toilet facilities, the parking area, swimming pool, and outdoor ceremony area. In terms of the development process and timeline, so this is again come up understandably by members of the public is to say, Great Highlands is approving something and county is approving something, but we don't understand really who's doing what and who's kind of responsible for what. So I just wanted to understandably, there's some complexity with the planning process. And I just wanted to take a moment to kind of talk through kind of what the process has been so far and what the remaining steps are in this process. So probably, more than 2 years ago, we started out with the pre-consultation process. And I will acknowledge that there were some bylaw concerns with this property. I understand that the applicants during the course of COVID had started operationalizing the event venue without the proper permissions in place. And a bylaw did get involved within Grey Highlands, and I don't sort of know the full specifics of that. But that was kind of when Ms. Loft was involved, and really we started to kind of hone in on a path of, okay, can we provide a route forward to begin legalizing this use? And so in that respect, we are considering this as a new use. Even though they may or may not have been running for a certain period of time, we don't kind of give credit to that. This is kind of, we're talking about from the ground up here. We're considering this as really a new use. So following the pre-consultation process, which I identified the types of studies that would be required, the applicant submitted a zoning bylaw to Grey Highlands, and county staff advised them that the official plan amendment would be required as well. So they did submit an OPA to the county. The applications were deemed complete by both Grey County and the Grey County and the municipality, and were circulated to all neighbors. The Planning Act stipulates that all neighbors within 120 meters of the property should be notified. We actually took it upon ourselves to increase that circulation to double that to 240 meters. Just noting that this is something that, neighbors are going to want to have a say on. And I felt that was important to make it known that this application was occurring. We had lots of comments that were received during that commenting period. We did have a public meeting. And since that public meeting, the applicants have been working to redefine that application and the proposal of what's being put forward here today. Eventually, we got to a point where we had felt, to the best of the applicant's capacity and our capacity, we have reasonably addressed most of those public comments and concerns. A staff report was prepared by the Grey Highlands planner. It was brought to Grey Highlands Council for a recommendation on whether to support the county official plan amendment. That was ultimately a lost vote by Grey Highlands. No further resolution was provided to county council or staff at that stage, but just noting that it would appear that Grey Highlands did not support the OPA at that stage. So here we are today in front of county council. We are looking for how to move forward with this application. Following any decision today, it would come forward for a future decision on the OPA bylaw, and it would still need to go back to Grey Highlands for a decision on the zoning bylaw amendment. Following all the appeal periods, the applicant would then have to go through a site plan approval process where we would come up with conditions that would need to be put in place for with regards to the site design and operationalization. And only after that has been signed and sealed and put in place that the applicants would then have the opportunity to apply for building permits. And from my understanding, that includes any retroactive building permits that would be required to permit some of these structures that were built without a building permit. So in terms of supporting work, we have received a planning justification report, a servicing study, a noise study, which, as Christine noted, included a peer review process, as well as an environmental impact study. Christine also took you through a few photos of the property, but just to reiterate, here are a few. So we've got the single detached dwelling in the top photo. On the right, we've got some of those tent platforms that existed during the time of a site visit. In the bottom left is kind of one of those glamping cabin / tent facilities. So everything is mostly movable and kind of temporary in nature. I do understand that some of these structures may have been built within that required setback in terms of zoning, and so these would be relocated should this move forward and as a requirement of the site plan process and the zoning process. So the bottom left is a picture of the inside of the hall structure. So it is fully enclosed, but there are sliding doors that go up and down to offer guests the opportunity to access the outside space. Those would be closed at a certain time in the evening to make sure that all noise is contained within the structure. On the left side there, they are proposing a small outdoor ceremony area within the forested area. And there's just some pictures of the parking area. So if we go back to basics of under the Planning Act, of course, we look at all of these areas of public interest or provincial interest, I should say. But I've highlighted a few that I think are most important to speak to today. So the protection of ecological systems, including natural areas, features, and functions. As noted, there's a lot of natural heritage on and around this property. And so this was a core concern for us. We did request that environmental impact study from the beginning. Part of the review for that was making sure noise impacts were reviewed as part of that study as well, and potential impacts on wildlife habitat as well. So we've got our human neighbors, but we've also got our animal neighbors, and that's part of something we need to consider as planners. H.1 I was the adequate provision and distribution of educational, health, social, cultural and recreational facilities. So I think, the Planning Act really recognizes we do need these spaces for our cultural celebrations, and that's important. And I'm sure there's a moment in everyone's lives where you've wanted or needed to go to a facility of this type of nature. And so there's always a question of where do we put these and what's the best opportunity for them. K is the adequate provision of employment opportunities. And, it's not like we're creating 20 full-time opportunities for work here, but there are a lot of knock-on opportunities for small-scale entrepreneurs involved in the event industry, whether it's caterers or musicians or event planners. Those are all part of our rural economy and needs to be considered here as well. And finally, just the appropriate location of growth and development. I think this is the core consideration here is this a good place for this type of development? And, I rack my mind asking myself, where is the best location for this type of development? If we put it in our settlement area, we're going to get lots of neighbors that are upset about that. If we put it in our agricultural areas, it's taking away from our agricultural land. If we put in our rural areas, it's not great from a natural heritage perspective. If we put in our industrial areas, no one really wants to celebrate there. So, there's not always a great answer to this, and it's something that we really worked through on this file. So under the provincial planning statement, the PPS supports resource-based recreational uses in rural areas. Again, staff felt that this wasn't quite a good fit for this particular land use, and so we looked more at other rural land uses as a category that we were investigating. So, as part of under the PPS, we are required to evaluate the impacts on agricultural operations, natural heritage, servicing considerations, traffic impacts. And, this is not an agricultural area. There's really no prime ag lands around here. There's few or no agricultural operations because it really is more of a rural forested area. And, those other aspects have certainly been investigated throughout this process as well. And under the Grey County official plan, So at the time OPA 22 was submitted, again, there weren't a lot of policies kind of in place that had a natural way of framing this event use or under the county's official plan. Again, we didn't feel it was a great fit under the resource-based recreational use policies. So we largely did rely on a lot of those overarching policies from the provincial planning statement to kind of frame how or why this should be used here. I will note that in May 2025, County Council did approve OPA 23, which would permit a small scale special event venue up to 0.8 hectares on a property of this size without the need for a county OPA. The zoning bylaw amendment and probably a site plan application would still be required. The current proposal is slightly larger, being 1.05 hectares, and must be justified based on the county official plan policies in effect at the time of submission, which was in 2024. So we're not judging this application based on our current policies, but I do think it's worth noting, that we have made a collective decision that we're in favor of locating smaller event venues somewhere. And so I just wanted to point that out for council's reference. So in terms of comments received, so I went through everything again yesterday and tried to figure out just the whole chain of events in terms of comments that I've received. So so far we've received about 21 comments from 21 households that oppose or raise concerns about the proposed development. Most of these are neighbors on surrounding lands. Occasionally, two members from one household will have provided comments through separate comment letters. We've also received 12 comments in support of the proposed development. 7 of those being from local businesses, 4 from friends or supporters of the applicant, and 1 from a community organization. We did have 1 more neutral comment asking questions only, as well as 2 agency comments being Gray Sobel and Enbridge Gas. The key concern that we've heard over and over in virtually all the comments we received were with regard to noise. People were concerned about the impact of noise on their quality of life, impact of noise on wildlife habitat. They had questions and concerns about exemptions to the noise bylaw, which is being considered under the zoning bylaw through Grey Highlands. The late hours and frequency of noisy events and concerns just about who will be monitoring the noise and how. Staff certainly recognize these are very valid questions and concerns. And certainly if I were a neighbor living beside this event venue, I would have these same questions and concerns. So in response to that, of course, we did request that noise assessment be done from the very beginning. We did also undertake a third-party peer review process of that noise assessment. The peer review process did make some recommendations, which have been implemented by the applicants through a revised submission. But some of the mitigation measures that will be taken include limiting larger events up to 12 times per year, which again would be within the zoning bylaw. Maintaining all amplified noise within the hall structure, which is a permanent structure. We're not talking a tent or anything like that. Noise levels would be actively monitored at all times using a decibel monitor on site. The owners or their delegates would be on site during all events, making sure that noise is monitored. The special event area is located in a central portion of the property, away from neighboring residences to the west. The EIS, again, through an addendum, evaluated noise impacts on wildlife. And there is still the opportunity to look at additional buffering that could be explored through a future site plan application, if that's something that we could consider in relation to those neighbors to the west. Another concern was just about kind of the concept of the event use itself. So again, whether or not this is a good space for an event venue, whether it meets the character of the area and the criteria for a resource-based recreational use. There were concerns about scaling up in future. So, staff in general, we get requests a lot for event venue types of facilities or glamping types of venues. People like to experience our natural environment, and in Grey County, we're very lucky to have the natural environment at our fingertips, which not everyone has. And so this is a destination area. again, noting this property does already have zoning permissions in place for a health spa. There is a need, of course, to balance the financial viability of a potential business, versus impacts to neighbors. So, we need to think, if we are limiting the number of events per year, what is that number that triggers that, viability of the business versus this is not a number that the business is actually sustainable at. The existing hall, dwelling and structures would all be located back from the road, so they do not visually detract from the rural nature of the area, kind of from an aesthetics perspective. And again, the OPA Schedule A has really been limited in scale and scope to situate that event venue area in the middle portion of the property only. With regards to site layout, there were concerns about the potential for trespassing of guests using the trail systems, concerns about existing structures built too close to property boundaries, and concerns that the camping area would be located too close to neighboring properties. So again, a site plan application would follow approval of the OPA and ZBA. And many of these concerns, particularly around where guests can and cannot go, can be likely addressed through signage, setbacks, buffering, fencing. So I think, there are things that we can do to regulate some of that guest behavior. The applicants have not requested at this stage any sort of departure from the established zoning setbacks. So I believe the established zoning setback is 15 meters. So any structures would need to be located at least 15 meters from that neighboring property line. If there are any existing tent structures that are located closer to that were constructed without permits, those would need to be removed. And my understanding is they will be removed. With regards to site servicing, so there were questions and concerns about the existing capacity of the septic systems on site. They were quite old, from the 60s or 70s. There was concerns about impact to Lake Eugenia waters. There were concerns about the portable toilets being used for 3 years, questions of waste collection, and just the combined servicing impact of the glamping site across the road. So again, I think these are all very valid concerns, and staff raised some of the same questions. The servicing study does confirm that all existing septic systems on site are over capacity at the moment, and that a centralized septic system should really be used and put in place, and that's what the servicing study has recommended. The applicants acknowledging, the expenses of putting together a business of this nature have requested a deferral of the requirement for establishing that larger septic system for a period of 3 years. And during that interim period, they would use portable toilet facilities. Staff have had a lot of conversations about this and whether or not this is the correct approach or not. The applicants have suggested that they would enter into a servicing agreement through a site plan agreement approach. They would also offer securities to the municipality to ensure after a period of 3 years that this septic system could be constructed. And so ultimately, although it's not kind of the run-of-the-mill servicing solution, staff do feel that we could support this approach, provided that the framing within that site plan agreement is in place to ensure that septic system is built within that 3-year time. Again, with regards to traffic, individuals had a number of questions and concerns around traffic on concession B. It is a paved municipal road. It has good sight lines. Grey Highlands staff did not see the need for a traffic impact study here, given the volume of cars. Again, there are only 41 parking spaces on this site, so we don't foresee this as being a generating a large volume of traffic. As noted, there are some nearby accommodations where guests may be able to use just to minimize the amount of traffic that would be coming to the site. With regards to impact to nature, again, I did talk quite a bit about this already, but individuals were concerned about impact to our wooded areas, wetlands, wildlife habitat, water contamination, guest behavior related to the natural environment, the potential for accidental fires, So again, the EIS has been undertaken. A holding provision does remain in effect for most of the property, so that no further development would be permitted without further amendments to that environmental impact study. The EIS has been reviewed by our ecology staff. Fires will only be permitted within designated areas, and the owners have developed an event policy manual outlining rules and expectations for guests, which again, there are some of those elements can be implemented through a site plan agreement. And some just general comments, again, mostly related to kind of previous bylaw infractions on the site and whether these individuals should be given another chance. So as noted at the beginning, staff are really treating this as a new application. Any structures that were built prior to approval without a building permit will be required to get retroactive building permits. Some of those structures are likely going to need to be relocated to conform to zoning bylaw requirements. So again, you know, I think certainly the applicants have had a change of course throughout the process of putting together this application. But there is the expectation that all of those things would need to conform and yeah, so that's sort of how we've been dealing with that. Okay, and so we did get some supportive comments as well, and I'll go through these quite quickly. But from an economic development perspective, we did hear from local businesses looking for partnership opportunities with the event venue, suggesting, you know, there is a demand for eco retreats within the area, especially event venues that offer both the guest accommodation and the event function space as well. So there was some general support there. From the natural environment, people felt it was a balanced approach to kind of having the event venue within a limited area and allowing guests to use existing pathways throughout the forested areas to be able to immerse themselves in nature as well. Just some general comments. One of the applicant, you know, does have some chronic health issues that she's been dealing with herself. So there was some suggestions from the applicant or from members of the public that she would be a good representative here and would be able to do to make people feel comfortable in this type of environment. With regards to agency comments, no significant concerns from Grace Auble, noting nothing should be located within the hazard lands and permits will be required within the regulated area, and Bridge Gas had no concerns. As noted, the municipality of Grey Highlands planner recommended support for the county OPA, but during their June 18th, 2025 council meeting, the motion to support the OPA 22 based on the staff recommendation resulted in a lost vote by council there. No further resolution or motion was passed at that stage. So just in summary, what we heard and the impact to the application. So overall, during our pre-consultation discussions, as Christine noted, they had originally wanted to have 150 guests at any time. This has changed to 95 guests up to 12 times per year or 50 at any time. Again, the hours of operation were originally any time until midnight. This has been reduced to 11:30 on weekends and 11 p.m. on weekdays. The OPA area has been adjusted from over 2 hectares to 1.05 hectares to prevent scaling up in the future without a further county official plan amendment. The historic hangar will not be used for events and has been excluded from the special event venue area, meaning all amplified noise will be located within the hall structure. The applicants will undertake a servicing agreement and an operational agreement, which will include noise monitoring through a future site plan approval process. All non-complying structures will be removed or relocated. All existing and new structures shall conform to the zoning bylaw setbacks and Ontario Building Code. And again, noise monitoring will occur at all events. The owners or their constituents will be on site at all times and have created an event rules document to be enforced for all guests under contract through the guests. So with that in mind, we do recommend that this report be received and that council support the staff recommendation and direct staff to prepare a bylaw for approval by county council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Hillier. So that allows us to put it out to committee, the whole members for questions and comments. And I guess, I guess perhaps Madam Clerk, if we clear the screen so we can see who's virtual as well. But perhaps if there's a specific item that somebody has a question to, we might need to call your presentation material back up again. Okay, so with that, I'm going to begin with Councillor Greig.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask two questions before speaking to the item again in the future, but two specific questions, if I could have answered, please. One of the deputations spoke to the noise study being simulated rather than technical. I'm wondering if staff can address this. That comment from a presenter as well. What is the penalty within the zoning bylaw on violations? What is the fine process, the amount, and how is it applied? And through which municipality does enforcement? I presume Grey Highlands, but the matter is before us in this report.
Okay, so I'll put that question to staff.
Yeah, thank you for those questions. With regards to the noise study, that's a good question. So I'm not actually sure about that. I'm not a noise study expert, and which was the reason why we had it peer reviewed. To be honest, it was one of the cleaner peer reviews that I've ever seen. It did recommend a few small changes or additions to some of the work that was done. But yeah, I'm not sure, and it's a good question, but I would have to double check on that.
Okay, and I do see Director Taylor has raised his hand.
Sorry, through you, Madam Warden, just to build on what Becky said, most noise studies that we deal with, particularly for any kind of concert or event venue use, are almost always simulated, simply because they don't have permission to be operating the events just yet. When we're dealing with an industrial noise study where we know, a widget making machine operates in 30 other facilities and generates X number of decibels, then they can deal with exactly what that noise is. But when we're dealing with event facilities or concert venues of that nature, then it's almost always a simulated. But as Becky has noted, if approved, there's requirements for monitoring to ensure that what is actually occurring on site is as per what the simulation was, so to speak.
Okay, so Councillor Gray, was there a follow-up to that then or afterward?
Second question is good now. Regarding the penalties.
Okay, Ms. Hilliard?
Yeah, thanks for that. So yeah, I don't want to speak on behalf of Grey Highlands noise bylaw. So it is a Grey Highland bylaw. And I'm assuming it would be their bylaw enforcement officers who would be enforcing that. I did have a look at it. I know that they do have a process for exemptions through the bylaw. I believe it is kind of by event that is formulated. So because this is an event venue, I imagine that would be a fairly laborious process for every time there's an event to seek that exemption, which I believe is why the applicants are looking to do that through a zoning bylaw approach. It is an unusual approach. It certainly was something that was discussed at Grey Highlands as whether that is an appropriate approach to do that, or whether that is, again, something that could be dealt with more concretely through a site plan agreement, for example, that spelled out those hours of operation. With regards to the fine, I believe there were some fines within the bylaw. I don't remember what they were offhand. I don't know if there's Grey Highland staff who may be more familiar with that bylaw who want to speak to that. But yeah, that is certainly something that it would be something for Grey Highlands to look at as a next step through the zoning approval process of, does it make the most sense to have that within the zoning bylaw? Or is there another means of spelling that out? And, I think for the applicant's benefit, putting the hours of operation, putting the exemption within the zoning bylaw, I think it was a good approach for the purposes of a transparent public discussion. Because having that kind of within the zoning bylaw really sets the framework for expectations for the public of what to expect there. There is no public process for site plan agreements, for example. So I think having that as part of the public record is helpful, but whether that is permanently situated within that zoning bylaw forevermore or not, I think is something that Grey Highlands will need to have a look at as a next step.
Okay, we'll go on to other questions. We'll go to Councillor Nielsen and then we'll go to Councillor Mackey after that.
Thank you very much, Warden. I do have a couple of questions and a couple of comments. For clarity for County Council, the lost vote at Grey Highlands was a 7-0 vote in support of moving forward with the county OP. A comment around the comments from Becky on the profitability of a proposal. I don't feel that it's like our place to make a decision based upon whether or not a business is profitable. It's really up to the business owner to decide on how to make their business profitable. And so making changes to a property specifically so that they could be profitable, either be increasing the number of guests that can come or increasing the number of events, really isn't something that should be considered when we're talking about planning, which, as I've been repeatedly bashed over the head, is land use only and not necessarily what the profitability of that land use. I do have a couple of questions though. My first question is regarding OP amendment today. So today the request is for county staff to approve, or sorry, county council to approve, but the zoning bylaw that has the restrictions, that has the requirements, that has the temporary use on the septic. Once the OP is passed, that is a land use that's of now ability on that land and property and it's site specific. How does that process work? If Grey Highlands denies the zoning, but now the county has already officially changed the abilities of this property, how is there protections for the county to rescind that official plan change if the zoning doesn't go through? Or what is that process, please? I have two other questions too.
Yeah, thanks for that question. And yeah, that's certainly something that we've been asking ourselves as well, of kind of what are all the what ifs of based on a decision on this file of if the county were to approve and Grey Highlands were to refuse, sort of what are the potential implications of that? Of course, there are appeal rights for Grey Highlands for the applicants on whatever decision is made by either council. Certainly it would be the prerogative of Grey Highlands, even if county council decides to approve the OPA, Grey Highlands could still choose to refuse the ZBA. It does kind of raise the question of, from a next step for the applicants, kind of what does that mean? Yeah, it certainly could get into appeal territory, but yeah, I don't want to speculate on that at this stage.
Follow up?
Yeah, I'll maybe ask my next two questions quickly so that way they can both finish at the same time. Regarding the noise study, the hall event space itself has a retractable wall, right? Like the whole wall can open up. Was the noise study done with the wall closed under the guidance that that's going to be how it operates, or with the wall open to showcase the noise level coming out? The report itself and their own changes or comments speak to the idea that the wall will be open until such time as the noise bylaw kicks in at I think 10 p.m. and when they're going to close the wall. So if we're looking at the impact to the environment and to nature and to the residents, you're saying that there's no wall there. Number two comment in terms of that is when we look at an event space in the middle of a city or an event space anywhere else, the structure is pretty solid and built and constructed to retain all the noise within that structure. If you go to an arena space in downtown Toronto, you stand outside, you're not hearing any of the noise from inside that building because the entire building is solid and sealed. This one has a retractable wall. And I just am curious as to the viability of that to actually retain the sound. So that's kind of why I'm looking at the study there. And then the other question, you've mentioned it, and I do appreciate the detail to which you went into the report and your explanation to County Council today. But when we look at it says in the report that the Conservation Authority doesn't have any questions or comment or any proposals against the proposal, other than the idea of please move the things you've already built within the hazard lands. There's challenges to what's been done. And I realize we're looking at this as a new structure, but at what point do we consider the likelihood of following through with restrictions or implementations that get put in versus history of a proposal? So I guess my question is on the noise study itself, wall down or open, and then trying to understand new file versus history.
Yeah, so if I recollect properly with the noise study, I believe that they did look at both a closed and open scenario for those retractable doors. And yes, they did, I think they're recommending that 10 PM is when all of the doors would be fully closed, which would then, of course, insulate the noise more fully. Again, that 10 PM is not part of the zoning, at this stage. I think that's a number that we can still work with. If we're looking for an earlier time, for example, I think that's still a discussion that can be explored as a next step with the applicants, either through that zoning or through that site plan application process. That's just the number that's been presented at this stage. With regards to the history, again, yeah, I think to your point about the Conservation Authority's comments, and just for everyone's benefit, I think that there was maybe one tent platform that the Conservation Authority had flagged was located within the hazard lands. And again, so any non-complying structures would be required to comply. So they would all need to be situated, of course, outside of the hazard lands and would have to conform to all the required setbacks and boundaries. And, luckily, a lot of what they have constructed are mostly just platforms at this stage. So they are fairly movable.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to Councillor Mackey next.
Thank you, Warden. My questions after all those questions from Councillor Nielsen have been answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions then from any other members? We'll go to Councillor Kentner.
No, thank you. And through you, Warden Matrosas, I have two concerns here. And the first one has to do with relief against the noise situation. It seems unusual that it is extended well past bedtime for a lot of people. And the other one has to do with an extension of relief from the need for a septic system. And are we setting precedents here with these two situations, or are there other examples where we have provided this kind of relief to other operators? Thank you.
Yeah, so that relief against the noise bylaw, that is personally a new one for me, seeing that within a zoning bylaw. And again, I think it was a good decision by the applicant to include that in there, because it's become part of that public discussion. And I think that's important to have. Again, whether or not that lies within that zoning bylaw amendment or not, again, is I think the discretion of Grey Highlands and sort of how they're interpreting that noise bylaw and how those exemption processes can work internally for them. And so, yeah, I don't necessarily want to speculate too much about that, not knowing kind of the full history of how that's been implemented in the past there. With regards to the septic system, and yes, I fully agree, it is a bit of an unusual situation. I know recently in Grey Highlands, there was another accommodation facility right on Lake Eugenia that was proposing portable toilets sort of indefinitely into the future as sort of the form of servicing for that proposal. And I didn't love that approach. I didn't really feel that met kind of the requirements of the PPS or the OP in terms of the types of servicing that would be permitted into the long term. For this one in particular, I think provided that the frameworks are in place to ensure that they can get to that future system that is going to be viable and will be the best case scenario, it's something that I can support and get behind, and especially acknowledging the servicing report has confirmed already, even with the existing zoning in place for the health spa and the trailers on site, those existing septic systems are already above capacity. So kind of knowing all of those things, the servicing study really did stress, we need to actually convert to the portable systems. These shouldn't really be used anymore. And so just to give them time to do that, because I do understand it is quite a big expense installing that, we did feel it was fair to allow them 3 years to be able to do that.
Okay, so I see that concludes with Councillor Kettner. I see Councillor Body and then Councillor McQueen. Councillor Body first.
Thank you, Warden. First of all, I want to thank planning. Very detailed report, Becky. Thank you. Obviously, there's been a lot of hard work, and I wouldn't want to count the number of hours that have gone into this. And the easiest answer for planning is to say no, and you've clearly done everything you can to try and chip off the corners of a square block to try and get it into a round hole. I think I'm probably consistent that I'm always complaining about urban development on rural services and that they need to be on urban services. This is much the same. The septic system, even when it's put in to have up to 95 people plus staff, is going to be one heck of a system. That's a rural septic system. Becky's indicated that, you know, we policy-wise probably be okay with that. From my point of view, to be consistent, I'm not okay with that type of service in a rural area. But thanks to staff for really working hard to try and make this work.
Okay, so next we go over to Councillor McQueen.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and good words from Councillor Body at the staff. There's been a lot of work here for sure. Couple things, and I apologize for my street Google or whatever went off because I thought you turn on volume off and it doesn't work, but I was trying to figure out some kilometers, and part of that, I want to talk about the noise exemption first. Generally at Grey Highlands, we will waive it. Requests for noise if it's a one-off event. A lot of times if somebody's having an event at their property, or we just had one for the Markdale Agricultural Society for their fair, you know, a lot of those are sort of one-offs type of things that, you know, that we would consider. So, you know, I mean, I'm sure that's in a lot of people's bylaws, but I think you know, and I want to say also, you know, I don't think we're against economic development, you know, a place for people to have a business, to make things happen, to have a venue, to have accommodations, because I know a big part and rural part of Grey County is where do people stay. We don't have hotels, we don't have a lot of stuff. There's other venues for that. And hey, you know what? Getting married out in the, you know, like I think Becky, you raised a good point. You know, where's a good place to have an officiation of your wedding? You know, people like that natural setting and that type of thing for sure. And that, but I think it comes back. It's about the bigger part, along with it's the noise concerns is what's been coming back more and more, you know, and I think we got to appreciate, I think it was made in from the first lady that spoke about 8 homes in a close proximity, which we know are in that area. And, you know, as I think Mr. Kentner said, that, you know, we certain times of night, we sort of want to shut things down and we don't want noise that long. So I was doing a little bit of a calculation, and I think it was mentioned that there are 2 wedding barns within the area, and wedding barns are probably on an agricultural area where there's bigger spaces. I mean, no doubt, and good reason for that. And they weren't a walk in the park either, those wedding barns. There was a lot of back and forth on that, a lot of time spent. But I was doing a calculation to the closest community center is the Osprey Community Center, which is 14 kilometers away. You know, and I've said this before. You know, have the wedding, have your evening dinner, and then throughout, we all have in our municipalities, we have community centers to host those events and those fun times. Like a wedding is a celebration of life. It's a fun thing. People, you know, you want to celebrate. Noise happens, and I don't think anybody here would argue against that, you know. And then, you know, if there's some alcohol involved, that maybe the tunage gets a little higher too. So I think it goes back to the extension. You know, I see it in a lot of the biggest comments. It goes into the extension into the evening. That is the key issue here.
Okay, thank you. And now we're over to the Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and thank you, Becky, for as Councillor Body mentioned, a really good report. My question is related to what response, if any, did we get to the First Nations that we circulated this file to? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. We did certainly circulate to them. We also advised the applicant to reach out to them during the pre-circulation stage. And to date, we haven't had any comments from any of our First Nations partners on this one.
Follow up?
Just a quick follow-up. Do we know whether the proponents actually engaged with the First Nations or not? Please.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm actually not sure about that. And certainly since the time of the pre-consultation for this one, and even since the time has been submitted, our ways of engaging and communicating with our First Nations partners has certainly evolved during the past year and a half or so. So I don't believe that I'm actually not sure if they did engage with our First Nations partners during the pre-consultation stage. Certainly they were circulated through the circulations, but no, I don't believe we had heard from them on this application.
Final follow-up, Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Just real quickly. I guess I would suggest that we should be making sure that the proponents do make contact with the First Nations. Just to assume they're going to leaves a little bit of room for wiggle. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to Councillor Dobreen next and then to Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you. And through you, thank you, Becky. I too is going to ask about the First Nations because we had experience where we circulated, but it wasn't reaching anyone. So the lack of response or acknowledgement of an email, we shouldn't assume that they received it and have no comment, because that has come back to be a problem. And certainly archaeological studies are being asked for severances. So this might be another. But on the subject of my questions, Madam Warden, the temporary use, or sorry, the deferral of the septic for 3 years, would it be reasonable then to allow for a temporary use to monitor what the impact on the community would be if this was approved? That is my first kind of concept. And are the portable toilets commercial toilets that would be, circulated? I have personal experience of a quiet family trailer park turned rural farm for hire, where groups and weddings come up to hoot and holler, and noise travels in rural Ontario. So to the point of the more urban halls, they're more soundproofed. I had a concern about the existing hall that was built without a permit, that it appears to be about 3/4 glass with a removable door, to have music going all afternoon and evening, even up until 10 is fine if you like the music. But, music is not to everyone's taste. And again, the enforcement aspect of it. And again, personal experience to people who don't understand the boundaries and requiring very clear guidance and enforcement, because we too have experienced trespassing from people who aren't there and who don't who visit once in 12 events, don't understand the property lines and wander, go for a walk on the trails and end up in someone's backyard. So I do have concerns. I guess my biggest